reasons why my marriage broke down as well. Because similarly, they were great women. I had a good life with them. I enjoyed my time with them. But there were aspects of their personalities which made it difficult to imagine giving them, like, the ability to raise my kids. You know, it's like, do I want to share that with them? Do I feel like they're going to give our kids or my kids, like, what they need? Like, I don't know. And that was a bit scary for me.
I commend you for recognizing that, certainly at a younger age than I ever did. I mean, I got married old enough that I should have known better, but I really didn't. And then had a child with someone who was incapable of truly loving another person, much like my mom had been. And I really, again, with time, and I always joke, my mom's been gone for a long time. I always say I've had so many wonderful conversations with her since she died. That's the only way we were able to do it.
Christy Pressinger is the owner and CEO of WriterGirl, a company that helps hospitals and healthcare organizations write patient-friendly website content. She's been doing this for 20 years and has over 30 employees, and the company is fully remote. I wanted to interview her because her conversation with me during the intro was all about kindness, and it was something that I had never really stopped to talk about with a guest before. And I thought it would be interesting to talk with her about being kind and being a business owner at the same time, and if it's possible for those two things to be possible, and if it's possible for those two things to be able to work together. In this conversation, we talked about kindness, we talked about love, we talked about building businesses and meditation and self-care and self-love, and it was a very deep conversation. So if you want to know more about how to build a culture that's full of kindness and love and compassion while still getting shit done, you're going to love this. Kindness is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I think that the thing they struggle the most with is not being kind to others, but not being kind to themselves. So if someone were struggling to be kind to themselves, what would you say to them?
That's a really good question. I think most of us know, or at least have heard, that the way we talk to ourselves is something we would never, ever speak to anybody else that way most of the time. Except I might have to put a caveat in there, except on social media now in the world in which we live. But it used to be that you would never speak to anyone else the way that, your own self-talk is so unkind. As with so many things, kindness, especially to yourself, but as well as to other people, requires both intention and attention. It's a practice. I think that living a meaningful life is the same thing. It requires both intention and attention. And if you're spending a lot of time, which I think a lot of people are, sadly, being unkind to yourself with your self-talk, with just being in your head about all sorts of things, then it makes it really challenging to live a meaningful life, because by definition, you're kind of wrapped up in yourself. And I think that most people who are very unkind to themselves would not think of themselves as being, what's the word? Not selfish, but just really self-focused. But in fact, you are very self-focused if you're being hateful to yourself. So I've had many people that I've coached or mentored that I've worked with who struggle with that. And I've said to all of them, you would never, ever be someone who would put yourself before others. And you don't think that that's what you're doing, but you really are doing that, because you're spending so much time self-flagellating that you can't possibly be looking at the people that you are with, that you are trying to have a positive impact on. So sometimes maybe just turning it around that way and thinking, yeah, my intention here is to be kind to other people, or to help this person that I'm talking to, or whatever the situation is, to not put myself first. If you really turn that around and realize, wow, I'm just focusing on me all the time, it kind of helps put a different spin on it and take your mind off of that a little bit. I found that to be helpful.
I have said this for a long time, similar, I think, to love. I've encountered this a lot in Asia, where a lot of people struggle with self-worth. And I felt like if someone has grown up in a way where they've never really felt love from someone else, like a parent, that it would be very difficult as an adult for them to express love in a healthy way to a partner. And that if someone really wanted to be able to have an adult relationship with someone that was meaningful, purposeful, and something that could be sustained, they would have to first learn to love themselves. So I feel like being kind to yourself is kind of a step on the journey to self-love.
Absolutely. I don't think that you can
What
love
would you say to that?
yourself without being kind to yourself. I mean, kindness is an integral part of love in my experience. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I don't have that training, but I would think that I don't know how you can love without being kind. Wouldn't you think that love, I mean, that kindness is integral to love?
Sure, but I think everyone has a way of expressing love. You know, there's people that have a sociopath for a parent, and that parent
Yeah.
thinks that they love that person and they think that they're expressing love, but the other person may hopefully realize that they're not actually receiving love, or they're receiving something else that's not good for them, but that the parent believes it's love. And even if they don't feel it's kind, the parent thinks what they're doing is right, usually because they were indoctrinated to something, and they're
Well,
just
just because they
perpetuating the
think it's love
cycle,
doesn't mean
unfortunately.
it's love. I mean, I think that, let me share my,
Of
many
course.
years of therapy, and we can leverage that with your audience. that, that learning, the problem is in that situation, when you are raised by someone who thinks that criticism is love. That was my experience, that I had a parent who really thought that criticism was love. Only after lots of therapy did I realize that was the way my mother expressed love, because of her own problems and like not worth going into. But, to kind of what you said, and then what happens is that as you grow up, then you fall into patterns of relationships because it's like comfortable shoes. That's what you think love is. And then what happens is you have to either go to therapy or stay in bad relationships where criticism is love, or eventually you break down and get to the point where this isn't working for me anymore. And then in my case, I had to figure out like, oh, I get it. That's why I married someone who was terribly critical, because I thought that felt like love to me. Took a while to unpack that one, but it didn't make it love. It just made it something that I thought was. So I think that, to your point, all sorts of people can say all sorts of things are love. We know there's aberrant behavior. I mean, we don't even need to tap that, but that is not actually love, just because someone thinks it is.
I had a few relationships in Asia where I hate to even say this. It's not even a brag. It just feels horrible. I was the first person in their life that ever showed them
Hmm.
kindness and love, and they didn't understand it, and they
Hmm.
didn't know what to do with it. But they knew that they
Hmm.
wanted to be around me. But it
Hmm.
was unhealthy for me because they didn't
Yeah.
know how to give it back.
Yeah, I think that's sad. That's really sad. But good for you, obviously, that you knew that you weren't codependent and you didn't just stay in that because you were going to make sure you helped them. And to our point here, loved yourself. Were kind to yourself and recognized that that way lies trouble for you. I don't think a lot of people know that. A lot of people would probably, in your experience that you just referenced, would feel good about themselves staying there, as opposed to recognizing that it's not good for them. That's that kind of self-sacrificing thing, but it really is codependent. Like, I'll take care of you at the expense of me. And then, as we all know, that leads to resentment and all sorts of bad passive aggressive behavior and all sorts of things that nobody really wants in their life.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why my
Wow.
marriage broke down as well. Because similarly, like these three women they were great women. I had a good life with them. I enjoyed my time with them. But there were aspects of their personalities which made it difficult to imagine giving them like the ability to raise my kids. It's like, do I want to share that with them? Do I feel like they're going to give our kids or my kids like what they need? Like, I don't know. And that was a bit scary for me. I was obviously really young with the first one. The second one, I was considering marriage. The third one, I actually married. And yeah, they all ended in the
Well,
same way,
I mean, I commend you for
where
recognizing that,
basically it was like
certainly at a
better to
younger
leave.
age than I ever did. I mean, I got married old enough that I should have known better, but I really didn't. And then had a child with someone who was incapable of truly loving another person, much like my mom had been. And I really,
Mm.
again, with time, and I always joke, my mom's been gone for a long time. I always say I've had so many wonderful conversations with her since she died. That's the only way we were able to do it. But looking at my son, I ended up really pretty much raising him alone. I divorced when he was 11, I think it was 11 or 12, and fortunately, he had somehow the strength of character at a very young age to decide not to see his dad anymore. And I didn't even know he was going to do that. He just cut him off when he was 16, and then ended up changing his name to my last name, and really just that was it as far as he was concerned, which served him very well. And somehow he recognized that. I don't know if he would articulate it that way. He's 22 now, so I'm not really sure. I think what happens is that he processed it a certain way at 12, another way at 16, another way at 18, and now, and you continue to process that as you go through. And I had him in therapy when he was young for all sorts of things that situations, things that happened. His uncle drowned right in front of him. That was a big deal. So I was like, we're going to get you in a little bit of therapy and let you know from a young age that this is okay to go talk to people, so that he understood that that's kind of baked into who he is. So he knows that he can talk to someone about things. So I think he'll continue to process that. And when I hear some of the things he says, and you obviously younger than me, I'm encouraged that there are people who have self-awareness that at a younger age aren't making the mistakes I did, just kind of bumbling through and thinking, well, this is what it is, and I have to stay here. And fortunately, I had a good friend who gave me the name of a therapist and I got out. I don't know that I would have without that, but you were able to do that. I think that's commendable.
I think the only reason I've been able to understand these things is because my parents were like quite emotionally intelligent and were able to teach that to me from a really young age. I mean, like, there's this one thing that really sticks out for me that I think about often, which was when they like brought me to bed every night. They would just say, "Look, whatever you want to say, just say it. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to judge you. Just whatever you feel like you need to say. I'm here. I'm listening." And that taught me that it was okay to tell people the truth, even like the
Mm-hmm.
deeper truths that most people
Mm-hmm.
hide from other people. And I
Mm-hmm.
call it blunt honesty. And people, when they meet me, like, I have no filter in that regard. Maybe that's not a great thing, but I will be bluntly honest with people I don't know. And some people really like it and some people don't like it. So people know very quickly if they like me or not. And that serves me well, because if someone's not going to
Mm-hmm.
like me, I want to know that they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to like me, so I don't waste my time on them. So I actually had this conversation with someone the other day. He introduced me to a potential client, and admittedly his introduction wasn't the best, and so I had to like say a few extra things to kind of move it forward. But they misinterpreted my introduction, and they're also from a different culture. And so I think there was a cultural difference, that they were making an assumption about why I was introduced to them. And so they got defensive and didn't want to talk about it. And then I was like, all right, well, fair enough. And then the guy came back to me privately and said that, like, uh, that I was aggressive with them. And I was like, look, I can't make everyone happy. So I'm just going to say, screw it. And there's two kinds of people. One that like you and want you to succeed, and some that don't like you and don't really care. He's like, look, like, I like you and I want you to succeed. That's why I introduced you to these guys, because they're a potential client for you. He's like, at the same time, like, I don't know how to make it better so that the introduction's better or that you have a better time with them. But like, it's not the first time I've heard someone, because we live in the same city and it's not a very large city. He's like, this is like the second or third time I've heard someone say to me that you're aggressive or intense. And I'm like, I don't know who those people would be, because I don't really know many people in the city. The
Mm-hmm.
people I do know, they seem to like me. But if that's the case, then that's their perception, and, fine.
Right.
I don't care what they think about me, because there's so many other people that do like me and do want to work with me and do want to be around me, and I focus my
Yeah.
energy on them.
No, and I don't
Can't
know
make
that that's
everybody
even,
like you.
it's interesting to me. I mean, somebody like you piques my curiosity when I first meet you. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But it's not, I mean, I don't really form an opinion like that about whether or not I like someone. I'm, I'm more, it piques my curiosity. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what's this person's experience that's different than mine? And then let's see where it goes. You bring to mind a situation once where my son and I were on a little small, really small cruise in Alaska, and there was no Wi-Fi or anything. So you really got to meet these other, there were like 50 other, guests on it. And so we met this couple from New York, and he was uh, like the owner, the CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar company. And I really liked him. I thought he was really interesting, and I really liked his wife, and my son liked him. We ended up eating dinner with him all the time and talking to them. And he was this kind of bigger guy. And he was kind of gruff. which I just found funny because I thought he's actually a very soft person, but he had this persona of this guy. And I said something about, yeah, you're really like kind of something like, I don't remember what I said. I would never have called him a teddy bear. That's dismissive, but it was like, you're softer, your gruff exterior hides your, your kind heart. And he was like, he looked at me, he's like, nobody ever thinks that about me. And I'm like, well, I'm not on the other side of a negotiating table with you either here. You know what I mean? We're not in a situation there, but it made me
Right.
curious. And it was interesting to see that. And then he kind of, I think he felt like he could just let his guard down and just be himself, this nice guy who, probably for many reasons had to have that exterior given what he did for a living and all of that kind of thing. But it was interesting to me because I think he did that on purpose to keep people at a distance, and I found him very interesting and it piqued my
Mm.
curiosity and we became friends.
That's interesting. I've seen people do that before, and some people have said that that's what I do. Not push people away, but that I have this kind of aura of like toughness. But then when you get to know me, you realize I'm actually like very
Hmm.
soft inside, and I'm like, I'm not hiding it. Like I know the kind of person I am, and I know that I guess the it goes back to love and kindness, because the way I see it is like life is so short, and people have so many regrets at the end of their life, and I don't want to have regrets when I'm dying. If I'm lucky enough to be aware that I'm dying and be able to reflect. And so I would rather live my life being nice to people, because everybody says, why don't you just be nice to me? People say, oh, people have a hard time. You don't know what people are going through. You just be kind to them, right? Everyone says be kind, love. Like everyone, there's so many people that say, especially after they've been on a psychedelic trip, which is another conversation. If you want to go into, we can. And they say, what I see in my experience is that the entire purpose for living and the universe is just love. Like everything goes back to love. Love is the universal constant, I guess. And what's the point in hurting people? What's the point in doing things that are vicious or negative or hurtful? There's just no reason for it unless you are wired to like that, in which case, I'm sorry, you're a psychopath or a sociopath, depending on the severity or to the degree to which you enjoy it, or the actions you take against others. And so, yeah, I'm a soft person. I'm a person that loves. I cry in movies. Like, I cry when I think about missing my family or missing, uh, you know, like thinking about when they're gonna die. Most people don't sit around and think about this stuff, but like, yeah, I'm a soft person who cares about people. Like,
you know
I'll
I,
take it. I don't care.
Something you
I
said brought
don't.
to mind
Yeah.
something that I don't, so much of this is things that I did a lot of personal work on many years ago. So now it's kind of hardwired into me. So I tend to forget about the fact that I did this
Mm,
work to get to where I am. But something that you said brought to mind thinking about love. And one of the things that I said when I was a long time ago, when I was more busy building my business, I had had some spectacular failures. I mean, just really big ones. And what was great about that is that it really kind of broke down my ego. And it made me realize like I could probably use some wise counselors because I could run this off the rails pretty easily. And so, I think I swung too far the other way, maybe had so much self doubt, but I swung back. It's fine. It took some time. But in any case, breaking down that ego for me was really what allowed me to build a business based on kindness. I had to work a lot on the kindness to myself, to your point. But what I also came to believe, and this is just my own experience, is that to your point, love is all that there is. And if you have this big ego, or really probably a fragile ego would be more appropriate, then you are really tied to this world and this place and this stuff. And in this world, you know, love is not the only thing. It's like all evidence to the contrary. It's money, it's power, it's position, right? But I look at this and like sometimes I think about that. The is it the Hubble telescope, whichever one it is, that latest one that shows the pictures, and every one of those little things is an actual galaxy, right? And you look at it and you're like, okay, I get it.
mm,
Like we're actually just the teeniest little speck of anything, and time is a blink of an eye. And if I can have that bigger perspective and not be focused on my ego and not be focused on what I have or what I look like or my belongings or things like that, that I really can get to what matters, which is love. That's the only thing that lasts. Everything else just passes, right? And I believe that I'm not a religious one of that the classic I'm spiritual but not religious, and really not even all that spiritual. It's really more I just think we're part of something bigger, that we are, we are made of stardust, right? I mean, it's miraculous that we are made of the same thing that stars are made of, and I think that's the meaning of ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We go back to that, and that in my personal philosophy, that our consciousness in some level survives, but the only part of that that survives is the love.
And only as long as there's someone alive to
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
you.
Another thing when I think about what makes me tear up, there's many things, but I think I shared with you talking about like my business and someone asking me that repeating question about what would be a failure if I sold it, and I don't have an intention to sell it at this point, but that I said if I sold it and walked away with bags of money and the culture that I worked so hard on, which was creating an environment where people can thrive, where every single one of them knows that they matter, that the special magic they bring would be missed if they left. If that disappeared, it would be the biggest failure of my life, other than really derailing my son's life. And when I think about the privilege of leading a group of people, that makes me tear up, because I think it's a really rich privilege to get to do that, to feed into people's lives in a way that truly makes a difference in their, see, it makes me tear up now, in their actual lives, in the joy that they feel in the work that they do, that they feel that it's meaningful, that their children see them do meaningful work, and that they are enriched by that. What could be a bigger privilege than that?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
that
having kids.
that is truly the best. I mean, really, I love that.
I grew up watching my dad be what some people might call weak towards his employees, where others might call it kindness. What I saw from that was he cared about the people he worked with and he wanted them to do a good job. But they took advantage. So I I became an adult and worked with other people and managed people and hired people and partnered with people and did all sorts of business with the goal of never being allowed to take advantage while always allowing myself to trust. At the same time, I feel like this empathy towards other people has potentially allowed them to take advantage of me by going slower than they should on tasks, on getting something done. How can someone balance getting shit done and being kind to people that are
Well,
responsible
that's
for
a
doing these
dance. I'll tell
things?
you, that's something that I think I shared with you. The values of my organization are: we are empowered, curious, kind, and fun. And if we have a weakness, I would say it is a tendency to slip into codependency, which then can become all the things we just talked about, because we tend to overtake care of one another, and then that can lead to problems, and that can also lead to people taking advantage. Over time, I've had to, and I'm the one who started the codependency, by the way, because I need everyone to be okay. So that's, it all starts with me. But realizing, I've said many times that don't mistake my kindness for weakness, because I do have a fiduciary responsibility to the organization, because it's much more than just me or one other, I mean, it's a group of people. I mean, it's not huge, it's 30 people and then a bunch of contractors, but it's enough that they live their lives depending on it. I have to take care of it. So I have to watch that. But I will tell you, I don't, in the years I've been doing this, which is 20 years, um, I think I can count on one hand the number of people who have left. I think we've only let two people go. I think. Um, and one person, it was sloppy work, and I felt like she could have been on the edge of taking advantage, but she never really did because we have unlimited time off. All the things, we work virtually. It would
Mm.
be very easy for someone to take advantage. But what I've experienced in my little world is that by casting the vision for the culture, which is what I do, and then the people live it out, is that they're protective of it because they really enjoy working here. They enjoy the freedoms that they have, and they don't take advantage of it because they really don't want it to go away. I frequently say that really the only person who reports to me is my COO. And I say to her, we're talking about different challenges, whatever. And I'm like, I know that there is no one sitting around drumming their fingers looking for something to do, even if their billable time isn't up there. They are constantly saying, what can I help with? What can I help with? Everything is stalled for me. So I can't do this billable work, but I'm sitting here. What can I do? What can I do? So I have not experienced that. And sometimes people will say, like, well, if you're all virtual, how do you know that people are working? And I say, well, if you are concerned about people working, you have a hiring problem. That's the problem, because no one is hired
Mm.
that we don't trust. And we have a lot of checks and balances now. When it was just me, I would interview people and kind of gauge the EQ by just like the way they would talk to me and the nonverbal communication, the smiling and not, kind of seeing like, what's that like? How do they fit? And now people better than me take that on, and we don't run into that a lot. So we have a really, really good hiring filter that we go through to avoid that. And we don't really have a lot of difficult clients. We did have one. So I'm trying to get back to answer, like, how do you balance that? I think, again, not mistaking kindness for weakness. We had a client that didn't know me because it was working with someone else, and working with one of our project managers. And I always say, if you don't get along with this project manager, it's all you, not her, because no one will work harder than her to find something about you that she likes. You know what I mean? She's like just really an accommodating person. And this client was very unkind to her, and she didn't want to tell me about it, and it came up the chain to me, and I was like, oh, no, 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 no. So I called the client, and it wasn't the actual person that was causing the problem. I called her boss, and we were talking, and she was kind of like, oh, okay, well, going forward. And I said, no, no, there is no going forward. Our values are empowered, curious, kind, and fun, and none of those things are happening here on your side or our side. It's not.
Mm.
We can't delight you. And so I think that this is just better. And she freaked
Right.
out and was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And ended up talking to her employee that was causing the problem. And then my employee said, well, they still have all those problems. They're just not taking it out on me anymore. And I was like, that's all we can ask for. Just stop taking it out on me. I've got nothing to do with your sandbox issues. So I think drawing a line in the sand and recognizing it is important. And I always say that those values, whether they're your personal values, your company values, whatever they are, having your own true north. And I always say that it's a thread that goes through everything. And then all of your decisions can hang upon that thread. So the expression of those values, whatever your own values might be, can change over time as you mature, as you grow and change. But the values themselves are inviolate. They stay the same. And then you can make your decisions based on that. Am I demonstrating empowerment? Am I demonstrating kindness? Am
Mm.
I having fun or being fun? Am I curious here about what's actually going on? And then it kind of helps move you forward. So did that answer your question in a meandering way?
Sure. It's it's your answer. That's what you gave. That's what matters. That's what you felt. When I was doing my software company, the things that were most important for me for the culture were transparency and clear communication, especially because we were a team of 17 and we were from like 8 or 9 different countries. And so all of us had different languages that were native to us. And yet myself and my COO were American. And so we tried to understand everyone's culture while making it clear that we wanted to run things the way an American company would run them. And the team liked that because, for example, there was a guy from the Pakistan, our web developer was from Pakistan. And I made it a point to do like a quarterly call with each of the employees. An hour, here's my calendar, book a call, let's just have a chat. And some of them thought it was like a performance review. And I'm like, nope, that's for your manager to do. I just want to get to know you as a human. And so this guy, he's like, I worked for another company before this for 3 years. I didn't even know the CEO's name. So the fact that you're like talking to me on a video call at my convenience for an hour or more blows me away. Some of the people from the Philippines we had hired were used to 2 to 4 hour commutes daily. And we gave them the
Mhm.
freedom to work from home. And we told people, work at the time that fits you. If you've got a kid and your kid's sick and you got to take him to the doctor, go take care of your kid. Because if you try to work, you're not going to be focused on the
Mhm.
work. You're going to be focused on your kid. So go do the thing that matters first. Get rid of that worry and then go and do your work, as long as it doesn't
Right.
interfere with anybody else's work, right? As long as you're available when there's meeting, if there's a meeting scheduled, be at the meeting, those kinds of things. And they thought that it was incredible because they weren't used to being treated like that from their other companies. And I was like, it's just a simple kindness that I would expect someone to do for me if I was their employee, but for which I never felt from any of my previous employment. So I said, when I'm going to have my company where I have employees, this is important for me. Fully digital company, work from wherever you are, work whenever you want, as long as you get the stuff done that you promised to do in a time frame that's relatively fair, just do it. And for me, that was good enough. And maybe that kindness was, taken advantage of, possibly. I'm not quite sure, and I'm not really the right person to judge that. But uh, that was what worked for us. And so one of the things that I did with the hiring process was I looked for people, or I tried to filter out people who didn't know how to read and like follow instructions. And I know when you're a startup, you want people that can read outside the lines and make great decisions and all of that. But like, bottom line is, if we're trying to hire for a position and there's 500 applicants, the ones that don't know how to follow instructions are not going to be the ones that I'm going to want to work with, even if they have or don't have the ability to think outside of the box and do what's right. And so that was like the thing for me that we focused on heavily throughout the hiring process. And we went to like very, I don't know how to say the word, we went to extreme lengths to input that into the entire process for every position. And part of the process was me getting involved with the process, where I wanted to be the first person that everyone saw, because I wanted to tell them, who am I? Why do I want you to come work with us? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how you're going to fit into that. I wanted to give them clarity over their situation so that they could make a decision about if it was the place they wanted to work at. At the same time, I expected them to have done some research about us and be able to ask questions. And if they didn't have that curiosity and they weren't willing to know more about us or learn specific things, like if you're a developer, if you're not asking about the tech stack, if you're not asking about, what are you currently developing, right? Then like, I know you don't care, you just want money. Like, I get it. At the end of the day, people just want a salary. Fine. You need to feed your family. I get it. But my hope is that you care about what you're doing. I want you to be interested in what we're doing. I want you to be excited about it. I can't expect it, but I can
Well, maybe
hope
they
to
just
find
aren't a
someone that's
fit.
interested in it. So there were
Yeah, if they
specific
don't, I mean, if they,
characteristics we looked
it's
for.
fine if people just want money, but maybe they're just not a fit for you. And that's okay. I mean, that's fine. I always say that
Yeah.
I've never done anything for money as my driver. I know that it comes like that old thing, do what you love, the money will come. It's like, yeah, whatever. But it's really more about, I'm always reaching for a feeling.
Mhm.
And to your point, if someone, like, to build on what you were saying, isn't curious about your organization, well, that's fine. They don't have to be. Maybe they just aren't a fit for you. That means you just need to go somewhere else, because everything you're saying is just being a good human, right? Is like actually caring about the livelihood, the life that you're feeding into, and the impact that you're going to have on each other's lives, hopefully. It's funny because I was just, some people were saying that they were getting some feedback from people that they didn't know what the vision was for the year for our organization. And I'm like, Okay, what does that mean? Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I'm thinking, there's a lot of corporations like, this is our year of excellence, whatever. It's like, I'm totally not like that. I've never really had like a goal or a vision like that. I mean, I say my vision is to continue to build this environment where people can thrive, where you can do meaningful work. And when I say meaningful work, I mean building relationships with our vendors, with the people that you work with your coworkers, with your clients, and helping them build relationships with their customers. That's like what meaningful work is to me. It's not the work product, it's the feeling that you get that makes something meaningful. And yes, you do excellent work, that your output, the tasks that you perform are well done, and you're proud of them. But that's always my vision, is to keep that going, and grow it in a way that allows people to continue to grow, both personally and professionally, in whatever manner they would like to do that, to the best of our ability. Um, so, and again, it's really all about being human. I think that enriching this life, we said once before, the unexamined life is not worth living, right? I mean, it's like, how can I encourage people to have a bit of curiosity about their own inner life, and about their life, and why they're here, and what they're doing, and so if I can create an environment that allows that, and not only allows it but encourages it, gives opportunity for it, then that feels good to me. And the work product, I'm proud of. We do great. That's good. But that's not really my why. I mean, I always said, if I could have cleaned houses and been in charge of my own destiny, I probably would have done it. It just so happened that I was able to do this other thing, so I did. But that's not the thing. It was always building a business based on kindness, because, like you said, I didn't feel like I had been treated kindly, or other people that I knew had necessarily been treated very kindly in other organizations. Even if the owners of those, I never worked in big, huge corporations, but even if those owners, they weren't necessarily bad people. I just think that sometimes it's really easy to get to a place where you're just looking at the bottom line. And I'm a bottom line thinker. I look at the bottom line, but I look at, I think I mentioned this to you, that in a conversation with some other business owner friends of mine, we were talking about, they've had successful exits, and done very well for themselves financially. And I said, I don't really look at my business through the lens of a balance sheet. I mean, of course I look at a balance sheet, but I look at it through the lens of a cultural balance sheet. And then I was like, oh, there you go. That's something that's going to be the title of a book. So I'm like working on that, because I think that cultural balance sheet, there are so many things that are hidden on a financial balance sheet, but that are very transparent on a cultural balance sheet. And they translate to a better bottom line. Now, granted, I could probably have more EBITDA, more net income, all these kind of things, if I was focused solely on that. But I'm the only owner. I get to determine what that needs to be, and how much is enough. I mean, I don't need more shoes. It's like, how many people can I feed into? That's more important to me. And as long as we're all profitable, we can keep giving people raises and paying people well, and I can live the life that I would like to live, and do meaningful work. I'm good. I'm good. And so I continue to look at that. That's the thing for me, is looking at that cultural balance sheet. When I'm talking with my leadership team about our tech stack, I am not a tech person, but our tech stack and all the different things that we're doing that are, challenging. It's challenging when you are a relationship business, but you have to have platforms and things to work with. And my question always comes back to, how is it affecting people? Is it affecting the joy that they have in their jobs? Have we come up with a tech solution for a relationship company? Do we need to pull some of that back, because people are feeling more like widgets, instead of actually doing the relational things that they enjoy doing, which is, supposed to be baked into their job? That's always my main concern, that I come back to that and say, how is this having an impact on the actual people and the culture that we all swim in every day?
So you had mentioned thinking about how to get your team members to think more about what's going on inside. If you haven't done this before, I have not, but I know people that have, and rave about it. You might want to consider a silent meditation retreat as a bonding experience for your team. There's like 3-day, 7-day, and 10-day ones. Obviously, 10 days is probably too much for the team, but basically, you're silent the entire time. There's In most of them, there's no internet and there's no
Mm-hmm.
technology. Pretty much, you just
Mm-hmm.
meditate and like eat and sleep and walk around. And I think that would be an incredible experience for a company where there's several days where everyone is forced to be together and they're
Hmm.
not allowed to say anything. I wonder how people would communicate if they can't use
Yeah, I
words.
went. Are you familiar with the Omega Institute in upstate New York? Um, in the
No.
probably 60s and 70s, it was actually started as a commune, and then it's now turned into like, I know, it's
I'm not
turned into like a
surprised.
spiritual retreat center in like Eckhart Tolle and other. There's all sorts of silent retreats and everything up there. So I went to a 7-day Eckhart Tolle retreat up there a long time ago. Some people did it silent. I did not do it silent, but there were people doing it silent. And I got there, and with Eckhart Tolle, you just sit in a room silent with this brilliant spiritual master, and you just sit there for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And the first time, I'm just like, what is this? I'm like looking at my watch practically, right? And that evening, I was back in my room, and I was thinking, what? This is dumb. I can't believe I'm going to be here for 7 days. And then my other part of myself was like, oh, what's more important? Should you be checking email right now? Maybe. It's like, no, maybe this is what you should be doing. And it was the only time in my life sitting there silent in the presence of just, I don't know what you call it, all that is, whatever, in a group of maybe, I don't know, maybe there are probably maybe 300 people there, if that, I don't know. And that just sitting there, that I actually felt my body effervesce. And it was like it like started at my feet, and it felt like there was like just effervescence moving up throughout my body. I've never felt it since. I never felt it before. And it was really amazing, that kind of, to your point, that
Mm.
silence of just getting inside yourself. When people first join our organization, they're kind of shocked because every meeting that is 3 people or more starts with a meditation. And it can be, when it first started, we had different meditations we use, and now usually they'll rotate it within the group and say, okay, it's up to you to get the meditation for this meeting. So it just becomes kind of a thing that we do, and it helps us be present to that meeting, because you run into a meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, and you're doing other things, you just were checking email, you're on your phone, you're doing stuff. So when you stop everything and turn everything off, and everybody turns off their camera, and only one person has the meditation going, and it just helps you be present in that space with the people. And usually it ends with, when you're ready, open your eyes, look around the room, and situate yourself, and now look at the other people, and kind of be present with the other people. And I find that to be very helpful. I mean, it's tremendously helpful. I don't know how. I mean, I think a silent retreat would be amazing. We have not done that. We use something called the Enneagram. There's a million different personality typing things out there, but we use the Enneagram. And the thing that I like about the Enneagram is that it's not about behavior, it's about motivation for behavior. So it forces you to look a little bit underneath, because many of these types, there's only 9 types, but they can look very similar in behavior, but the why is very, very different. And so we've done full day retreats, basically, because it's kind of a deeper work on the Enneagram, so that allows all of us to be together to recognize um, why someone that you work with may behave in the way that they do, as opposed to looking at the behavior, which then allows there to be empathy for the way someone is behaving, and also helps you get a little outside of yourself. Instead of looking at everything from your own perspective, you're able to say, oh, and then I always call it radical empathy, being like, oh, I get it now. That's okay. So now I don't have to be so defensive, or I don't have to be angry or irritated. I can be like, okay, now how do I respond to that?
I like the idea of having a meditation at the beginning of a meeting so that you force people to kind of slow down so that they can take the time to process what they had just gone through so that then they can be clear minded about what's about to happen. Because a lot of people I know, they're like, oh, I'm in a meeting now, I'm going to be in a meeting. And like, to be fair, I have 6 calls today, but the only time of the day when I feel really peaceful is when I'm doing an interview, because everything else is off.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me and
Mm-hmm.
you. That's all there is. Where if I'm on the phone with someone, I might get a message from someone else and I may look at it. Well, I'm still listening to you. I'm still
I'm
there
not
with
fully.
you, kind of, but I'm not like we can say something, we can get something done, but
Mhm.
it's like split brain, and that's just not healthy. So, with that in mind, what's the most important thing you've learned in life so far?
Well, I'm old, so I have to really think about that. I have a lot of life to think about. Um, the most important thing that I've learned and that I would share and that I share with my son and with anyone that I work with is that we're part of something so much bigger than whatever it is you're going through at the moment. And I guess maybe that's perspective in some way that really, like I said, getting a look at that picture of the satellite picture that shows every little dot is a galaxy and that we're just a speck in that, and not to dismiss the importance of the now. I think that the now is all there is, and it's tremendously important. And you have a choice about how you're going to experience that now. And giving yourself some perspective on that helps you kind of, it almost like lets you drop your shoulders a little bit and be like, okay, okay.